Good afternoon, Rockhounds. A chilly Sunday afternoon. Today, what I'd like to talk about is what I would think would be iconic Ontario minerals. So in other words, the kinds of minerals that a rockhound could typically expect to find in Ontario. They're big in the various pegmatites around Bancroft, but we've also got some outlying rockhound locations. There's some more southerly locations where we're going to find the calcites, the dollostones, the fluorites, that kind of thing. And then we've got the northerly locations where we're finding corundums, the various feldspars, sometimes in gem quality, those kind of things. So anyway, I'm just kind of randomly just looking around at my collection, and I'm going to basically show you things that you can expect to find in Ontario. So even if you're not from Ontario and you want to come up here, all the stuff I'm going to show you is easily found in Ontario. So, I guess it would be very wrong of me not to start with one of my all-time favorites here. Check this out, okay? Apatite. This stuff is really common in the pegmatites, especially in the Bancroft area. This is a particularly fine example. It's almost at the quality of what I would call trilliumite, which is a gem apatite, typically green. Found near Wilberforce, but this stuff here in a like a calcite. This particular specimen was found at the Gibson property. In fact, I found it a couple of months back. Just a phenomenal color, but a little bit too fractured for my liking. Here's some other examples. Just a really nice crystal form. You can tell, obviously, hexagonal crystal. You know, six-sided in shape. The apatite's almost always coming in prisms, most typically green in Ontario. It's not unusual to find it in reds as well. This specimen here, again, I believe this was from the Gibson property, and as was this, but it's also pretty common. Bear Lake used to be an amazing spot to find the apatite, but all over the place. The Miller property, that is the one by Eganville, another huge location for apatites. Really rich in the rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium. If you're looking at a rare earth, if you're looking at this through the spectroscope, you're actually going to see the spectrum, the rare earth spectrum, very faint double lines of neodymium and praseodymium in the yellow band of the spectrum. Titanite. So this is my just most favorite specimen that I've found. Just huge cluster of titanites. Found that not more than about, I don't know, 5 weeks ago at the Gibson property. Just kind of laying there. Somebody missed it. They must have dug it up. It was covered in dirt. It had rained. And there it was. You'll know the titanite. Typically, and this piece here, by the way, was found at the Miller property near Eganville. Typically, it's got what they call a chisel nose. Kind of flattens down on the ends there. Often the crystal is twinned. And it can also come as a gem quality specimen known as sphene. This is quite rich in rare earths and radioactives, and highly lustrous. Look at the light kind of glinting off the surface here. Very soft, it scratches easily. You want to be careful when you're washing the specimen. Don't scrub it with a scrubbing brush. You're liable to take the lovely luster off. Bear Lake was once a place for this. Gibson property. Certain parts of the Gibson property where you find an awful lot of this stuff. There's your amphibole. This is kind of common to find in cavities within the rock. This piece here I found at the Gibson property, I believe it was, not so long ago. This piece, this was a great find. I found an enormous pocket of this stuff, amphibole. It's a monoclinic. There are many different kinds of amphibole, but when I say monoclinic, if you look at the surface, maybe it's hard to see, looking edge on at the top of the prism, you can see how it's sloped. So basically what we're talking about here is, if we're talking about a monoclinic crystal, it's got a C-axis, it's got two axes going across, possibly of different lengths, and one of those axes is inclined. So the slope reflects itself out on the surface. The incline of the axes, you'll see it on the surface. It doesn't have to be on the top, but it often is. And it's dark. It's a silicate mineral, silicon tetrahedrons kind of joined together. And of course, this here, tremolite, is another example of an amphibole. This is sort of midway on its way to asbestos, highly lustrous. This specimen here, I found at Grace Lake, and some of the colors are just beautiful. Some of my favorite gem colors are coming with the tremolite. Be real careful when you're handling it though. It's like got needle-like spines where it fractures, and your fingers are just cut to pieces. Moving on to the pyroxenes, again, similar kind of idea as the amphibole, but the crystal, if you look at it head on, it's almost got 90-degree, not quite, but almost 90-degree angles, right? It's like four-sided kind of appearing, whereas where you look at this, nothing like that. It's multi-sided. So, I mean, that's a real quick, easy way to, you know, spot your pyroxene from the amphibole. I mean, here's another nice, neat example with, you've got this almost 90-degree edges on it. Another example of a pyroxene. Where did I find this one? Jeez, I can't remember. Sorry, man. Forgot on that. Oh, okay, here we go. You know what this is? Maybe the color's not so great. This one's a little nicer. Amazonite. You find this in the pegmatites, particularly up on the Musclo Greenview Road area. There's the McDonald Mine Road, and all along to either side you've got tons and tons of amazonite. High quality amazonite in the mines. McDonald Mine sadly has been closed, but I mean, this is a form of feldspar, right? And there's so many different feldspar varieties in Ontario. This has a lead content to it. It's not like it's going to poison you, but they say this is the stone of gamblers. You keep a piece of amazonite in your pocket and you're likely to have a very successful evening with the cards. So next on the list here is the feldspars. Huge quantities of feldspar through Ontario. In certain cases you've got some really beautiful gem quality stuff. In particular what you can find at Crystal Lake, which is perovskite. There's some amazing stuff you can dig up at Quadville. Has a very faint pink background color to it. And then of course wherever you're going in any kind of pegmatite area, you often can find these feldspars. So in my book here, this was the first of the 3 books in the Rockhound series. I'm just going to read just a little bit about what I've said about feldspar. As a group, feldspars share the common trait of having 2 easy directions of cleavage. One direction is near perfect, the other splits a little more roughly. Cleavages in the plagioclase feldspars, that is the calcium-sodium feldspars, are indicative of it belonging to the triclinic crystal system. Cleavages intersect at oblique angles. In a rough examination, the 2 varieties of feldspar can be further distinguished by the specimen's color and striations. Only orthoclase can be pink, only plagioclase will be dark. The light color could fall into either variety. An exposed surface should be examined for the appearance of striations. Any such observance of these markings will likely categorize your crystal as a plagioclase feldspar, though the absence of striations would not necessarily mean that the mineral is orthoclase feldspar. So we've got a couple of interesting gem feldspars here. This is what they call labradorite. Very similar to perovskite. It comes in various greens and blues, almost, you know, peacock-like in nature. We've got the moonstone. Check this out here. There it is. So this is your moonstone. We can find moonstone in Ontario. Maybe kind of hard to show, but it has this beautiful sort of what they call a schiller, I believe it is, as a reflection of, well, it indicates reflections from a centipede-like inclusion, they call it. So that's your moonstone. Oh, and here's a little tiny piece of what's called spectrolite. Comes from Finland. They found this stuff while they were blasting for, they were making tank traps during World War II, and they opened up a seam of this stuff. It's absolutely beautiful when faceted. Here's one of my all-time favorite finds. It's little, it's tiny, but it's actually a corundum crystal. A lot of this you can find along the sides of the York River, in particular near the Egan Chutes area. And this one I found right near Cardiff at a road cutting just above the town. And another good example here. Oh, what was that? You can see that this is from the cyanites, in the Burgess mine area. You can also go up to Craigmont, Robillard Mountain. Fantastic spot for finding corundum. Now moving along here, garnets, found these in the Marmara area at the big huge mine in Marmara. Garnets were always along the seams where the calcite is. Beautiful. I love garnets, and of course they can be faceted into some lovely collector gemstones. And I'm sure you're all wondering, what about the amethyst from Thunder Bay? Well, sure enough, lots and lots of beautiful amethyst up in Thunder Bay. I mean, look at this one. This is actually a obviously faceted specimen. It's worth a fair bit of money. It's just beautiful, lovely color, extremely well faceted. Only problem is when the stone has a low refractive index, it needs to be cut extremely deep, which that is not, in order to have what they call a total internal reflection. So it becomes hard to actually mount a stone of this size in regular jewelry or on a ring, just because of the depth that is required in the cut in order to reflect the light. And of course, if the amethyst is heated, you'll often get citrine, which is this yellowy quartz. They're both varieties of quartz. Lovely deep cut on that. Again, you need the deep cut because of the low refractive index. There, my mouth's getting all. Molybdenum comes in flakes, particularly in the Wilberforce area. Tons and tons of abandoned molybdenum mines. They use this stuff for hardening armor. And at one time before World War I, we were sending large quantities over to Europe, and it came back to us in the form of hardened tank armor and hardened artillery pieces from the Germans. Fluorite, very common Ontario mineral specimen. This particular piece coming from the Flamborough quarry. You know that for a fact because it's got a yellow internal color, which is, they say it's organic. Cubic in shape, so you can tell by that. Basically the cubic crystal has axes of equal length joining each other at 90 degrees, hence the cubic shape. The Rogers mine provides some really phenomenal fluorite. Hard to see the color well in this light, but basically it's a lovely green on a barite matrix. Quite common. This is hydrothermally deposited, blasted up from deep in the earth. The barite, the fluorite, celestite. Perry Lake mine. Got this from right on the edge of the railway line. Didn't even have to leave the railway line itself. The old railway line that ran through the Perry Lake mine just on the edge of Moira Lake. There's tons of this stuff buried in the debris around there. No, I have not forgotten to mention the diopside. This particular stuff here from Dog Lake. But I mean, the diopside can be found all across Ontario. It's quite common. Usually a lovely greenish color. It's of the variety of the pyroxene minerals. Monoclinic. This stuff here has a magnesium, calcium, Si2O6 composition, but when you're getting more iron in it, it becomes what they call a Hedenbergite. Just a rough look. These are chromium diopsides. They often come in a kimberlite pipe. Just incredible green colors and faceted. Very rare fluorite. Head on, look at the diamond shape cross section to that stuff. This was from the Essenville Road Cut area, just north of Wilberforce. One of the few places in the world where you're actually going to find this stuff, and it's pretty difficult to tell it apart from other mineral specimens. You really do have to do a lab examination, but I happen to know what it is just because I found it there along with all the rest of the fluorite. Need I even mention what this is? Sodalite from the Princess Sodalite mine. One of those pieces I found up on top of Cancronite Hill, and there are other locations in the Bancroft area. It's actually a seam that supposedly goes right beneath the road in front of the Princess Sodalite mine and continues on behind the mine for several kilometers. So sodalite, this was actually going to be, it was a toss-up between this stuff and the amethyst to be Ontario's emblem mineral. I ended up with amethyst being the material because it was more commonly found, and the Princess Sodalite mine at the time had a monopoly on the actual sodalite, so it would have been they would have held all rights to the Ontario mineral. Hornblende. So what we're talking about here, this is just really a general term for amphiboles that are basically magnesium silicates. In some cases we've got calcium or aluminum or iron mixed in with them. Very complex formulas and all varieties, but this is the general thing. I found this one at Bear Lake. Oh, while I'm at it, here's another corundum. A little bit more brassy. A nice thin prism, whereas the other one was a spindle. This one was found at the Goots Farm area. Quite well known for its corundums, but not a very large deposit. Phalogopite mica. Here's a lovely, beautiful big crystal of the phalogopite. Breaks off in thin sheets, and this is the magnesium mica, whereby you're going to find the biotite is the black mica, which is iron related. This stuff can be used for insulating, whereas the iron mica, it transmits electricity too easily, and therefore it's no good for use as an insulator. So I guess that's it. I mean, there are more minerals in Ontario, so maybe you can see next to me, maybe not, but this is the uranophane, like a powdery sort of radioactive seeping material. Often places like Bycroft, Faraday, those kind of mines up in the Bancroft area, you'll actually find the uranophane in spikes, like needle-like spikes. Really quite a beautiful crystal to see. I mean, it's hard to forget the silver strike cobalt. That was huge. I mean, 420 million ounces. There's the gold up at Red Lake. I mean, all sorts of, you know, smaller isolated mineral strikes. I mean, El Dorado, the gold at El Dorado, you know, over 3,000 ounces just in a single little tiny seam, like a cave. It's just such a mineral-rich place. So, I mean, if you are interested in the minerals, you want to come to Ontario, check out what there is for a rockhound. Good idea is to check out my 3-volume series. That is called the Rockhound series, obviously. Go figure. I mean, that definitely leads you in the right direction to start you off. But beyond that, I mean, the sky's the limit. Ontario is just one of the richest places going for minerals.